Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Ship and Read. Today I'll be doing my October wrap up, and before I jump in, please ignore the mess that is in my room right now. It is complete chaos. I don't even know what's happening. I'm double stacking, triple stacking the books right now because I'm running out of space and I am moving soon, so I hope to be able to get like new shelves sometime soon and just be able to like manage my space better because it is not going so well. But that being said though, I'm excited to talk about the books that I read this past month. And before I jump right into the books I read, if you are new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as hit the notification bell so you can be subscribed every time I post new videos. But for the month of October, I really did not read a ton of books. I only read 6 books, so it is by far my worst month so far that I can think of. Like the past few months have been great, but for some reason October was just not doing great for me and I was having a hard time reading and just focusing, so just not great. Thankfully though, most of the books I read were 3 stars and up. So I did read one book that was 3 stars, one book that was 3.5 stars, 2 books that were 4 stars, and then 2 more books that were 5 stars. So overall, even though my quantity was not the greatest, the quality of the books I read were pretty good. So I am very happy about that. And unlike normally, I didn't really do notes this time around. I've just been like crazy busy with work. I just started a new job, by the way. This is my 3rd week into this job, so I just been like learning all the different things, doing some training. I was in orientation for a while, so it's just been chaotic, and I feel like that also affected my reading because I just wasn't in the mood to read after just like learning and like just so much like information overload the past few weeks that reading more was just like taking a lot out of me. So I think that definitely like factored into it. So yeah, like anyways, point is though, the books I did read, I was very happy about. And the other point is that I didn't do notes. So if I'm a little bit more like rambly, that's definitely why. So the first book that I want to discuss today is Devil in the Dark Water, which I gave 3.5 stars. This book basically is a mystery thriller. It's set in the 1600s where it follows a guy called Samuel Pepys, who's considered one of the world's greatest detective and has like one of the greatest minds. However, due to whatever circumstances in the beginning of the book, he is now charged with some sort of crime. He's not exactly sure what that crime is, and he is being forced to transport himself to Amsterdam for trial. And with him there is a bodyguard called Arent, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who is just basically trying to figure out what exactly his employer is being charged with and the fact that he can't believe that Samuel Pepys did anything bad. But both of them are now on this ship heading to Amsterdam. Shortly after boarding though, they quickly realize that something is amiss, and people end up dying. There are some things that's happening around the ship, and they're not exactly sure what's going on. However, because Samuel is locked up, Arent must now figure out what exactly is going on and play the detective role that he never really did previously. So basically he just has to solve this mystery all by himself and figure out who is behind it, or if it's perhaps the devil behind it all. This book started off very slow in the beginning of the book. That being said though, I did think it picked up like towards the second half. Things started to get a lot more interesting. What I really liked about this book was how there were so many layers, and as the reveal was happening, like they were just uncovering layer after layer, which I found really fascinating. But because there's also so many layers, it also made the book very confusing. So it was definitely one of those like catch-22 where it's like there's so many stuff going on, but it made the reveal like very fascinating, but also made the book more confusing. And because there were just so many layers, I really enjoyed the plot reveal and like the twist at the end, because I definitely didn't see it coming at all. There were just so much of this book that I was like, wow, how did I not see this? But like in retrospect though, I was like, that made a lot of sense. But I did talk about this a lot more in my Goodreads mystery vlog. I actually read a lot of books in that video, so I will link that somewhere above and down below in case you want to check that out, because I went much more in depth with my thoughts and all the other books I read that were featured in the Goodreads Choice Awards of 2020. Then the next book that I picked up is Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This book I gave 5 stars. It was definitely a new favorite of mine. So this is the last book in the trilogy, and it picks up right after the second book ends, where Vasily Vasily is now, you know, basically figuring out how to save Moscow, as well as, you know, her own romance with the Frost Demon and so many other layers. I'm not going to go too much into it because again, this is the third and final book to this trilogy, but I loved it. I also talk about this a lot more in detail in my series that I want to finish, episode 1, where I discuss this series as well as 3 other series that I managed to finish, because I did a whole video recently where I wanted to just finish all the series, so I'll link that video up above and down below in case you check that out. So I definitely mentioned this book quite a few times in my videos already. Honestly, this book is just so stunning. I really love the romance between Vasily as well as the Frost Demon. It was just so beautiful. Like, I was like so here for it. I also really liked all the various creatures and their relationships with each other, specifically the bear and the Frost Demon. Their relationship is just so unique, and I felt like there were so many layers to that, a lot of depth to it, and you can tell that there's a lot of history between the two of them, just because of who they are to each other and what they mean to each other. And I just really liked how Vasily just kind of like intervened and changed kind of their relationship up a bit. Basically, I just thought it was really well done. There was one part about this book, the ending, that I found very bittersweet, but I think because of that, it made the book more stunning, if that makes any sense. It just kind of brought an extra layer of exquisiteness that I really enjoyed. So yeah, like, if you have not picked up this series, I highly implore you to, because it was so good. It was so beautiful. The writing was beautiful. The creatures, the characters, like, there's just so much about the series that I absolutely adored, and definitely cannot rave about this enough. Then this next book that I picked up is Chain of Gold, which I gave 4 stars. So this is the first book in the Last Hours trilogy. It kind of follows the children of the characters who were in the Infernal Devices, which was set in like the 1800s, where it follows like Tessa Gray, Jim Carstairs, Will Herondale, and all those people about like the clockworks. This book follows their children, and honestly, I kind of found myself way more invested with the 1800 like Shadowhunter world versus the ones in the present day. I don't know why, I just felt like I just liked their characters more. So I definitely enjoyed this book a lot more, I think, compared to the last trilogy that I read from this, which was Lady Midnight. I forget what that trilogy is called, but like Lady Midnight, like Prince of Shadows or something like that. Like, I really did not care much for that series at all, but this book was really good. I also talked about this a lot more in my young adult fantasy Goodreads, so I will link that somewhere above and down below in case you want to check that out. But this book was fantastic. What I liked most about this book was Cordelia and her relationships with the other like shadow hunters, specifically with Lucy as well as James. First of all, the friendship between Cordelia and Lucy was just so like pure, and I just really enjoyed reading about their relationships and how much they adored each other. I felt like their banter was very much like sisters, and I just really enjoyed like just reading about the two of them and their dynamics with each other. On the other hand, I also really like reading about Cordelia and James. It was so obvious to everyone that they were clearly like, they're gonna, like, this is not a spoiler, but like we all know that Cordelia and James gonna be together at the end of the day. But what I liked most was just reading about the two of them and how Cordelia is like facing this whole like one-sided love, even though it's clearly not one-sided to everyone around them, because you can clearly tell that James has a thing for her, even though like, you know, she doesn't know. And like the one thing that frustrates me so much is that this whole thing about James and Grace, I'm not going to go into it because I feel like it's super obvious in terms of like their relationships together and like, you know, who's like, you know, I'm not gonna go into it like spoilers, but like point is though, there's a lot of layers to this book, and I'm really happy about just like uncovering it all. And I'm hoping that some of my theories, which I feel like it's super obvious, will come into fruition, because there's a lot going on and there's a lot to unpack in future books. So I cannot wait to pick up the sequel as soon as possible, as well as finish up the series whenever that book comes out. So the next book that I want to discuss is Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. This is the book that I gave 3 stars. Definitely one of my, you know, least memorable book in this entire pile. I don't know what it was, but I really didn't care much for it. This is a sequel to Wicked Fox, where it just kind of goes on with the Gumiho and what happened to them like afterward. And honestly, like, I don't know, I just felt like I felt very disconnected with the characters this time around, even though I really enjoyed Junwoo and Somin's like banter and their like relationship turn into romance kind of situation. That part is the one thing that I really liked about this book, which is what gave this book 3 stars for me. But everything else though, I really didn't care much for. I actually didn't care much for the main characters of the first book, Mi-young or Ji-hoon. I don't know, for some reason I just like was like, okay, cool, they're here, you know. But I felt like the first book already like went into their story very well, and there was really no, I mean, honestly, to be honest, there was no need for a sequel. I just didn't feel like this book did much to like enhance the first book or like add on anything really. The first book could have easily been a standalone and I would have been totally fine with it, or like if anything add on another like 50 pages or something to just like, you know, make it like more like done. But like there really was not a need for this book, and I felt like this book was just the author trying to add on more things to a very like widely popular first book, and like that was it. Then the next book that I picked up is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book was so freaking cute. I gave this book 5 stars. I now see why everyone is obsessed with it. I picked it up on a whim actually from Book of the Month, and I really didn't know what to expect. I was like, I just want something like cute and fluffy and like, you know, and this was everything. This was so freaking cute. I loved everything about it, from their relationships, from their like awkwardness together, and how he was like always the one, like always into her, and there's just like unrequited love for like, oh, I was here for everything about this book. I also loved how like sciencey it was, but like and nerdy, but not too much, and it just made the book so much more endearing for me. So this book basically follows Olive, who is a PhD student, and somehow like something happens and she ends up going into like a fake relationship with Adam, who is a professor. But since he wasn't her like direct professor, there was no like conflict of interest, so technically they could date and everything, because they're all like in their 20s and like 30s basically. So anyways, point is though, she somehow ends up in a fake relationship with him, and she's like falling for him, and I was just like, this is so cute, guys. Like this book, everything about this book was just adorable. It was funny. It was like, it gave me all the warm gushy feelings I loved, and it was just a really fun read. And I'm so happy that I read this book because it was so cute, like Adam and like everything. And there's one steamy scene here that was like super steamy, and I was like, wow, I am whole fear for this. Like I was not expecting it, but it was good. It was done really well, and I was here for it. And yeah, like if you haven't read this book yet and you're looking for something like really cute but also have a little bit like a sexy scene, definitely check out this one. This is so good. All right, then this last book that I want to discuss is Killing November by Adriana Mather. This book I gave 4 stars. This book basically follows a young girl called November who ends up going to this boarding school because something happened to her aunt, who is her father's sister. So her father's like, you know what, like go to this boarding school, it'll just be a few weeks, I need to like, you know, wrap some things up on my end and like yada 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 whatever. So she's like, okay. So she ends up going to this boarding school, and unbeknownst to her, she ends up at an assassin's like training school where everyone comes in from sort of family background, and there's a lot of history between all of them. They basically been like behind the scenes families, like secret assassins and spies for like centuries. So there's a lot of shared history between all of the students there, and she goes into the school late. She's like 1 or 2 years like after when everyone else usually starts. Second of all, she doesn't know the history, so she's going in completely blind, and everyone seems to kind of know like the history. They might not know her specifically, but they know like exactly what's going on. So she is very much like out of the loop and very confused with most of this book. But I really enjoy this. I liked learning more about, you know, as she uncovers all the different like layers of the family's relationships with each other, and like who her parents are and why she was brought to this school, and what's happening with her mom and her dad. There was just so much about this book that I really enjoyed. I just really liked espionage books. I feel like I usually don't really gear towards that, and there isn't a lot of like young adult espionage books out there, but this book was definitely great. I think the only other series I can kind of compare this to is the Ali Carter series, where that one's also like spies and everything, but most of the like the mystery thrillers that I read for young adult are like actual just thrillers, like, you know, murder mysteries like the Truly Devious series or something like that. They're not espionage, and I feel like if you're looking for a really good espionage book, this is definitely it. And it was just, I really liked all the action scenes as well, and there's just a lot of layers that she had to uncover and just like secrets to uncover as well about her own background, her family background, and it was just a lot of fun just uncovering all of that and finding everything out. So basically those are all the books that I read this past month. Very short like wrap up, I think, compared to like my past few months, but I'm really happy about the books I read in terms of the quality, so I'm not too mad about that. So anyways, that's it for this video. Let me down below if you have read any of these books before. If you have, what did you guys think about them? What did you guys read this past month? But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you'd like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below, as well as hit the notification bell. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!